Hello everyone. Today we are going to be looking at trigonometric ratios. The first thing we need to do with trigonometric ratios is look at labeling the triangle. Now we can all see this is a right angle triangle. The first thing we're going to look at is this little symbol on our triangle, which is theta. This is how we're going to decide what sides go with what names. Theta is what we call the unknown angle. Alright, so this represents the angle that we're going to be trying to find. Now we find this angle by labeling the different sides. One side we already know. This one is the hypotenuse. This one is the longest side opposite the right angle. Okay, so this one is, as we can see, if we were to draw a line from the hypotenuse, it is directly opposite our square there, which shows that this triangle is the right angle. The next side that we're going to look at is called the opposite side. Right? This one, it gets its name from its description. It is opposite the theta angle. So if I was to draw a line, we can see there is theta. If we were to look from where theta is directly out, the side directly opposite it is the opposite side. Now this means we just have one side left to look at. This one is called the adjacent side. Right? It's called adjacent because it means it's right next to the angle. It's the side that is right next to it. Whoops. Alright. On this side, as you can see, we have the different ratios that go with that triangle. Alright, so we have the phrase that's going to help you remember it, SOHCAHTOA. Now we can see that each one has been color-coded with arrows going up telling you what each one means. So when we look at so I'm going to draw a line breaking this down. When we look at this first section here, we have the S, which represents the sine rule. And when we're looking at using the sine rule, we use opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite side and a hypotenuse side. The next one we look at is the so that one matches with this rule here. Sine theta is equal to the opposite divided by hypotenuse. That is the trigonometric ratio for sine. The next one we're looking at is the cosine rule, which is in the middle here. So the cosine rule, which involves the adjacent side and the hypotenuse side. And if we were to match it down to its ratio down here, it's this one here, whereas cos theta, which is equal to adjacent divided by hypotenuse. And our last one is the tangent rule, or tan. This involves the opposite side and the adjacent side. This is the only one that does not involve the hypotenuse. Okay? And when we look at this one's ratio all the way down here, we can see that it's tan theta opposite over adjacent. Now, there's a common theme that runs through these ratios when we look at SOHCAHTOA. We always say the one that we're dividing by last. So if we're looking at the sine rule, it's SOH. So it's opposite, so it's the sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Alright, so we can see here that the opposite comes first before the hypotenuse, and that's the one we are dividing by. Okay, and it's the same for each one. So when you want to remember your rules, remember SOHCAHTOA. Remember which one you want to use, sine, cosine, or tan, and that will help you to pick out the ratios you're going to use. Next, we need to know where to find these buttons on our calculators, because we are going to be using them quite a bit. We can see here that I've circled them on a picture, alright? On the calculator, they're shown as sin, cos, tan, alright? They don't use the full words. We still call, instead of saying sin, we still call it sine because all we've done is drop the E, right? So it's sine, cos, and tan on our calculator, and it's right next to the divide symbol. So right here, got the divide symbol, so you look for that, and it's right next to them. Now, when we calculate the angle, all right, this is giving us the rule to use, and then it's actually giving us an angle, and it wants us to work it out. So to do this, we just have to input it on the calculator. The first thing we have to do is we have to find the cos button on the calculator. And as we can see, we've gone to this row here where the divide symbol is, and we've scrolled across, and there is cos there. So we click that, and then we enter in the 40. All right, so cos comes up, we enter in our value of 40, and we hit enter, and we get an answer of 0.767. Don't forget, if it asks you to round, you have to be very careful when you're rounding, okay? The next one is we want to actually write out these rules, okay? So actually trying to figure out which ones go with which. It's a really important step. So the first thing you always have to do is label your triangle. So you have to go through and label. So we can see here, step 1, label the triangle, and we've done this in blue. We've gone, all right, here, opposite the right angle is our hypotenuse. All right, then we go, here's our theta. So if we draw a line to the opposite side, that is our opposite angle. So whatever's left here is our adjacent value. All right. Step 2, we've got to write out our actual rules for sine, cosine, and tangent. So I've written out sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Cos theta is a over h, adjacent over hypotenuse. And tan theta is O over A, which is opposite over adjacent. Now we're just substituting these values in, okay? Now we're going to go find our O on our triangle, which is here. I'll do this in a different color actually. So find our, I'll do it in, so find our O over here, and that matches up with A. So therefore, where O is on our sine rule, we substitute in A. We do the same thing with H. We look for the H, and that's here. And underneath it, we can see that there's C. So therefore, this becomes A over C. We do the same thing with cos. We find the B, we find the A, which is here, and B is the one with it. So therefore, it's B over C. And what we have left is essentially A is the last two, which is TOA, which is O over A. So we have A over B. And that's how you're going to write out these rules, guys. And the last one is how to know which rule to use, okay? So this one is where people get confused because you look at a triangle and go, what one do I use? Do I use sine, cosine, or tan? That's what this step's going to show you. Step 1, always label all 3 of your sides. It is really important to, okay? So I've labeled our sides. We've drawn our line across, and there is our opposite. We draw our line across that way, and there is our hypotenuse. And what is left is our adjacent side. Step 2, this is a little trick I've learnt. It's circle the sides with a number next to it, okay? So we can see that only 2 sides have values, okay? This one here does not have value. So we circle those 2 that do have a value, so we know they're the 2 sides we want to be using, okay? Now we're going to look at this chart and we can see what letters we've circled. We've got O and A, all right? So our opposite and adjacent might be here. There's only one rule that has them both, which is our tangent rule. So that means we're going to be looking at the tangent rule, and that's the rule we're going to be using for this, right? So then we just write out the rule, which is tan theta, which opposite 15 over 20, which is our adjacent. And that's what you're going to do for any triangle that you have that you don't know how to find the sides. go through those steps, and that will help you figure out which rule you want to use.